The rain poured heavily over Ikoyi Cemetery, the grey clouds covering the Lagos sky like a blanket of sorrow. It had been exactly 1 year since Chief Roland Olatunji buried the love of his life, Amara. The pain hadn't dulled. It sat in his chest like a rock, growing heavier with each sunrise. Roland was one of Nigeria's most successful real estate tycoons, owning half of Lekki's waterfront properties, yet all the wealth in the world couldn't fill the void Amara's death left in his heart. On this particular day, he arrived at the cemetery dressed simply, in a black kaftan. He wanted no one to see the broken man he had become. As he walked toward Amara's grave, something unusual caught his attention. A young boy, not more than 16, stood before the grave, in the rain. The boy's face was thin, clothes worn out, but it wasn't his appearance that froze Roland. It was the way he stared at the tombstone, like someone mourning more than just a stranger. Roland cleared his throat. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice deep and curious. The boy looked up, startled, but quickly masked his emotions. I'm nobody, sir," the boy muttered, stepping back. Roland's sharp eyes scanned him. There was something strangely familiar about the boy's face, the curve of his lips, the sharp line of his nose. For a moment, Roland's heart skipped. "Why are you visiting this grave?" Roland pressed. The boy hesitated, glanced at the tombstone that read, Amara Olatunji, 19782024, and then looked away. "My mother used to work for her," he replied quietly. "She told me about Madame Amara and said she was a kind woman. We heard about her demise in the news, and my mother followed her burial arrangements and found out that she was buried here." He hesitated briefly, then added, "I don't even know why I came today. I've been here with my mother before, but today, something strange kept pushing me to come again, like I needed to be here." The boy added cryptically before turning to leave. Roland's curiosity burned hotter. "Wait, what's your name?" The boy stopped, rain dripping from his brows. "John," he replied without turning back. "John Wenkwo." And then, before Roland could ask anything else, John disappeared into the cemetery shadows, leaving behind more questions than answers. Roland stood frozen, staring at the boy's fading figure. Why did that boy look so much like me, and why did he visit Amara's grave? That night, Roland couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the boy's face in his mind. There was something there, something unsettling, and he was determined to find out. Chief Roland Olatunji couldn't shake off the image of the boy at the cemetery. The name John Nwankwo kept ringing in his head like a bell that refused to stop. That night he sat in his mansion, staring at the flickering lights of Lekki from his window, but his mind wasn't in the present. It was in the past. The next morning, Roland called his personal assistant, Daniel. "Daniel, I want you to do something for me," he ordered. "Yes, sir," Daniel responded promptly. "Find everything you can about a boy named John Nwankwo. Age should be around 16. I want to know who his mother is, where he lives, everything." Daniel nodded without asking further questions. He knew his boss well. When Chief Olatunji asked for something, it wasn't a request. 2 days later, Daniel returned with surprising information. "Sir, I found something," he said, holding a file. "John Nwankwo lives in Ajagunle with his mother, Stella Nwankwo." Roland's heart skipped. "Stella?" "Yes, sir. She used to work here about 17 years ago." The name hit Roland like cold water. Stella had been one of Amara's personal assistants back in the day, a soft-spoken, pretty woman who suddenly disappeared without notice. Roland's mind began to connect the dots. "Is the boy her son?" he asked Daniel. "Yes, sir. According to the information, she raised him alone. There's no record of who the father is." Roland rubbed his forehead. His heart thudded faster. His mind wandered back to years long buried, years he had tried so hard to forget. He could still remember how it all started. Stella was young, innocent, and worked as the personal assistant to Amara, his late wife. She was respectful, humble, and always careful around him. Roland often admired her discipline and quiet beauty, but he never crossed the line at first. Then came the turning point. Stella had issues with her accommodation. The government marked her rented apartment for demolition, and they were all asked to vacate the building. Amara, with her generous heart, didn't think twice. She asked Stella to move into their service quarters temporarily, assuring her that she was part of the family and should feel safe under their roof. At that time, Amara's business had grown beyond borders. She was constantly traveling out of the country. Sometimes she would be away for weeks, leaving the house quiet, empty and lonely. And that was when it began. Stella remained dutiful and minding her business, but Roland began to watch her differently. Her soft laughter with the domestic staff, her quiet footsteps in the hallway at night, the way her eyes dropped any time she caught him staring. He started calling her more often for small, unnecessary errands late at night. Each call became an opportunity to be near her, to draw her into conversations she didn't want to have. She resisted him at first. He remembered how her voice shook the first time he touched her hand, how she begged him quietly, "Please, sir, this is not right. Madam has been good to me." But he was persistent until she eventually fell for it. After the first night, it continued. Each time Amara travelled, it became harder to resist. Then one morning, they woke up and Stella was gone. Her room was empty. She had quietly packed her things and left the house without a trace. Chief Roland couldn't sleep that night after Daniel's findings. Very early the next day, he called Daniel. "Prepare the car. We're going to Ajagunle." The streets of Ajagunle were a far cry from the gated estates of Lekki. The air smelled of burning wood and sweat, the noise of traders and Danfo buses filling the air. Roland rarely visited places like this anymore, but today was different. They finally stopped in front of a tiny, rusted bungalow. Stella's name was written on the mailbox. Roland stepped out of the car, took a deep breath and knocked on the door. It took a while, but eventually the door opened. Standing before him was Stella. She looked older, tired, but her eyes were the same, soft and brown. She froze when she saw him. "Chief Roland?" she whispered, like she'd seen a ghost. "It's been a long time, Stella," Roland said gently. For a few seconds there was silence between them, and then she swallowed hard and stepped aside. "Come in." Inside the small living room, Roland struggled to find his words. "I met a boy yesterday, at Amara's grave. He said his name is John Wankwo." Stella's face immediately turned pale. "He didn't tell me he was going there," she muttered. Roland leaned forward. "Is he your son?" She nodded silently, her eyes filling with tears. "And is he mine?" Roland asked quietly, his voice breaking. Stella looked away, wiping her eyes. "I never meant for you to find out this way." Roland's heart sank. "You knew all these years. Why didn't you tell me?" Stella shook her head. "You were married to my boss, a woman who treated me like her own sister. You were building a family. I couldn't destroy that. So when I found out I was pregnant, I left." Roland stood up, his breath shaky. 16 years, Stella. I have a son and I didn't even know." Stella couldn't stop her tears. "I never wanted to ruin your life and marriage. I struggled. I worked day and night to raise him alone." Roland sat back down, overwhelmed. "Does he know?" Stella shook her head. "He only knows that his father abandoned us. I never told him who you were." Silence hung heavy between them. Roland finally spoke. "I want to meet him properly." The following day, Roland couldn't concentrate on anything at the office. Every time he looked at a document, it blurred before his eyes. His mind was stuck on one thing: John. By 2 p.m, he found himself driving back to Ajagunle, alone this time. He wanted to see the boy, not as a millionaire or a stranger, but as a father. When he arrived at Stella's house, he knocked gently. It was John who opened the door this time. The boy's eyes widened when he saw him. You again? John said, his brows furrowing. Good evening, Roland said calmly. Can I come in? John hesitated but stepped aside. My mother is inside. Stella came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands with a wrapper. When she saw Roland, she gave John a quick look. John, sit down, she said quietly. The three of them sat in the small living room. John, Roland began, clearing his throat. I want to tell you something important. John folded his arms, eyeing him suspiciously. You've been looking for answers, Roland continued, and I think you deserve to know the truth. Stella swallowed hard and nodded for him to continue. Roland took a deep breath. I'm your father, he blurted out. Silence. The room felt like it stopped breathing. John's eyes flickered between him and his mother. What? What do you mean, sir? Stella reached out to touch her son's hand. It's true, John. He's your father. The boy stood up abruptly, shaking his head. No, that's not possible. Roland stood up too, his voice low but steady. I didn't know. Not until yesterday. Your mother hid it from me, to protect my marriage. John's lips trembled. All these years. You were living large in Lekki while we suffered here. Roland's heart broke at the bitterness in his voice. I didn't know, son. If I had known, I would never have left you. John turned to his mother. You told me my father abandoned us. Tears rolled down Stella's face. I wanted to protect you from pain. John shook his head, anger and confusion swirling in his eyes. You are both liars. He grabbed his slippers and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Roland stood frozen, the echo of the slam vibrating in his chest. Stella wiped her face. He will need time. Roland nodded, fighting the lump in his throat. I have lost too much already. I can't lose him too. John kept walking. He didn't know how far he had walked. The evening breeze brushed against his skin, but he barely felt it. His heart was pounding too hard, his head spinning with confusion and anger. All his life he had grown up believing his father was a heartless man who abandoned him and his mother. Now this stranger, a millionaire he had only seen on TV, was telling him he was his father. It didn't make sense. He walked through the crowded streets of Ajagunle like a ghost, unaware of the noise around him. His mind kept replaying the conversation, the look in his mother's eyes, the sadness in Chief Roland's voice. By the time he returned home, it was almost midnight. Stella was waiting at the door, her face anxious. John, she whispered when she saw him, are you all right? John didn't answer. He walked past her and into his room, shutting the door quietly. Stella stood at the door for a long time, staring at the closed door like she could read her son's thoughts through it. The next day, John woke up early, even though he hadn't slept properly. He sat quietly at the edge of his bed, staring at an old photograph of him and his mother. There was a knock at the door. John? Stella's voice came gently. Your father is outside. John stiffened. He's not my father. But despite his words, something in him wanted to see the man again. He stepped out and saw Roland standing outside, dressed simply. He looked older, like he hadn't slept either. Roland smiled when he saw him, but it was a sad, unsure smile. Good morning, son, he greeted. John folded his arms. Why are you here? Roland took a breath. I came to talk, but not here. Will you come with me? John looked at his mother. Stella nodded slightly. Without speaking, John followed Roland to his black SUV. The car ride was silent, the tension thick between them. They drove out of Ajagunle, past Third Mainland Bridge, and finally stopped in front of a quiet, well-kept park in Ikoyi. Roland turned to him. They sat on a bench under a tree. I met your mother when I was a young man. She was sweet, kind, but I was foolish. She was my late wife's personal assistant and she lived with us. One thing led to the other and we got into a secret relationship. It was all my fault. We woke up one morning and couldn't find your mother in the house. I didn't know she was pregnant. She never told me. Amara and I didn't have any children in our marriage of almost 20 years. John remained quiet. I'm not here to force anything, Roland continued gently. I just want to know you, to be a part of your life, because I've lost too much already. I lost Amara. I lost your mother's friendship. I won't lose you too. John swallowed hard. You can't just show up after 16 years and expect me to accept you. Roland nodded slowly. I know, but I will wait, even if it takes the rest of my life. They sat in silence for a while, the birds chirping softly around them. As they stood up to leave, Roland paused and turned towards John. I love you so much, my son, he said loudly. John simply stared at him but said nothing. Roland dropped him off at home and promised to see him again. At home, John couldn't stop thinking of the sudden revelation. All his life he had imagined his mother and him fighting alone in the world, abandoned. Now he realized there had been layers of secrets and protection all along. In his home, Chief Roland sat quietly in his study, lost in thought, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. Daniel, Roland's assistant, peeked in. Sir, sorry to disturb. There's a man outside asking to see you. He says it's urgent. He says he knows something about the boy. A cold chill ran down Roland's spine. Bring him in. A few minutes later, a man walked in, shabbily dressed, his eyes darting suspiciously. My name is Obiora, the man said. I used to know Stella back then. I came to tell you the truth about John. He is not who you think he is. The room fell silent. Roland's face darkened. What do you mean? Obiora leaned forward. I know things. Things Stella never told you. Roland's jaw tightened. What exactly are you saying, Mr. Obiora? Obiora gave a sly smile. I know something you don't know. Stella has been hiding more than just the boy's existence. Let's just say, the boy's paternity may not be as clear as you think. Roland slammed his fist on the table. Stop playing games, speak clearly. Well, you have to pay me, Obiora muttered. So, you came here to blackmail me? Roland asked in shock. Obiora shrugged. Call it business. I've kept quiet for 16 years, but the truth, it's worth something. Roland's voice was low but dangerous. You will tell me everything you know. Now. Obiora smiled mischievously, but before he could speak, Roland signaled Daniel. Take him to the security room. Make sure he doesn't leave until I question him properly. Daniel obeyed immediately, grabbing Obiora by the arm and dragging him out. Later that night, Roland sat in his study, listening as Obiora finally spoke after being pressured by the security. I knew Stella before she worked for you, Obiora began. She was my girlfriend, and we did things together. Roland's brows furrowed. Are you saying you're the father? Obiora hesitated. I don't know, it could be me or you, but when I saw the boy, he looked like me. Roland stood up slowly, trying to process what he'd just heard. Why are you coming now? Obiora looked down. I wanted to meet him. I wanted the truth too, but I also needed money. Roland stared at him coldly. You'll get nothing from me. Now leave. When Obiora was gone, Roland sat quietly, his mind in turmoil. Could it be true? Was John really his son? Or not? The next morning, Roland visited Stella again. She knew something was wrong the moment she opened the door. What is it? She asked. Roland didn't waste time. Obiora came to my house. He claims you were in a relationship with him, that the boy may not be mine. Stella's face paled, her lips trembling. That man is a liar. Tell me the truth, Stella. No more secrets, Roland said calmly. Stella sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. It is true I was in a relationship with him, but when you and I started our secret affair, I cut him off completely. Roland stood quietly, staring at her. I will do a DNA test, he said firmly. I need to know the truth. Stella nodded silently. The day of the DNA test felt like Judgment Day for everyone. Chief Roland sat quietly in the waiting area of a private hospital in Victoria Island. Across from him, John sat stiffly, his eyes glued to the floor. Stella sat beside her son, her face pale and her fingers tightly clasped. The silence between them was heavy. The nurse finally stepped forward. "Sir, we're ready." The test didn't take long, just a simple cheek swab from both Roland and John, but the weight of what it represented was crushing. When it was done, Roland turned to John. "Whatever the result says, I want you to know one thing," he said softly. "I want to be your father, not because of blood, but because you are my son in every way that matters." John didn't say anything. He nodded slightly but kept his face unreadable. The hospital told them the result would take 3 days. Those 3 days felt like 3 years. Roland couldn't focus on anything, business meetings, calls, or even food. His mind kept drifting back to John's face. Stella stayed away, afraid to face him again. John returned to his small world in Ajagunla, but nothing felt normal anymore. His friends noticed how quiet he had become. He barely slept at night, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't answer. On the 3rd day, the hospital called. The results were ready. Roland arrived at the hospital early. Stella and John came together, neither speaking as they walked in. The doctor sat behind the table, the sealed envelope in front of him. He cleared his throat. "The DNA test shows a 99.9% probability of paternity." A long silence followed. Roland blinked, unsure he heard correctly. "You are the biological father of John Nwankwo," the doctor concluded. Stella burst into quiet tears. John sat frozen, staring at the table. Roland swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. He looked at his son, unsure of what to say. John stood up slowly. "So it's true," he whispered. Roland nodded, standing too. "I didn't want to destroy your home," Stella sobbed, "but I should have told you." John didn't say anything. He just walked toward the door. Roland called after him, "John, please." The boy stopped but didn't turn. "You've carried this secret for 16 years, he said quietly. "I need time to carry it too." And then he walked out. That night, Roland sat alone in his massive living room, staring at the test result in his hand. He had always thought success was measured by how much he owned, but now he realized his greatest treasure had been out there in Ajagunle all along. And he almost missed it. He was so grateful to have a child to call his own. But something told him this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Chief Roland hadn't seen or heard from John. Every attempt to call Stella was met with the same response: "He's not ready yet." The waiting tortured him. For a man used to controlling everything, business, people, outcomes, this was the one thing he couldn't control, his son's heart. Every morning he checked his phone, hoping to see a message, even a simple text. But nothing came. Meanwhile, John was fighting a battle within himself. He would sit outside their small bungalow every evening, staring at the streetlights, wondering how his life changed overnight. His mother tried to talk to him, but he remained distant. "I don't know how to feel, Mama," he finally confessed one night. "All my life I thought I didn't have a father. Now I have one and he's rich and powerful, but I don't even know who I am anymore." Stella sat beside him. "You are still my son, John. Nothing changes that, and whether you like it or not, you are also his son." John shook his head. He lived in a palace while we struggled in the trenches. How do I just forgive that? Stella sighed deeply. He didn't know. You can't punish him for what he didn't know. John remained silent, the war raging inside him. One Saturday morning, there was a knock at their door. When Stella opened it, she found a delivery man standing there with a small box. "This is for John Nwankwo," he said. Stella collected it and called her son. John opened the box and found a letter inside, neatly folded, written in Roland's handwriting. "My son, I cannot change the past. I cannot take away the years we lost. But I want to build the future with you, if you let me. This is not a gift, it's a key to your future. I will wait till you are ready to accept me. Signed, Your Father. Beneath the letter was a shiny key and an address. Plot 32B, Banana Island. John stared at it, confused. His mother looked over his shoulder. "What is this?" John shook his head. "I don't know." The key sat on John's table for days. Every morning when he woke up, it was the first thing his eyes landed on, and every night, before he slept, he stared at it like it held the answer to everything he was searching for. His mother never asked him what he planned to do. She simply watched him, quietly praying. Finally, one Sunday afternoon, John stood up from the chair and picked up the key. "I'm going," he said simply. Stella's heart raced, but she nodded without a word. Banana Island felt like another country. The clean streets, the quiet air, the expensive cars, everything screamed of a life John had never known. When he arrived at Plot 32B, he stood in front of the massive black gate for a long time, wondering if he should turn back. But something in him pushed him forward. The security men at the gate recognized him immediately and opened without question. Inside the compound, he saw a small bungalow beside the main mansion. Not grand, but peaceful. The kind of place someone could call home. He walked slowly to the door and used the key. It opened. Inside, the house was fully furnished, but simple, homely. On the center table, there was another letter. "John, this house is yours, not because I want to buy your love, but because I want you to have the life you deserve. You don't have to live here if you don't want to. I only want one thing, a chance to know you. Signed, Your Dad." John's throat tightened. He sat down on the couch, overwhelmed by everything. He realized something then. This wasn't about the house or the money or the luxury. It was about the man who had been searching for him, and the part of himself he had spent so long trying to understand. As the evening sun set over the island, John walked over to the main mansion. He hesitated at the door, then knocked. Roland opened the door himself. For a moment they just stared at each other, father and son, both unsure of what to say. Finally, John spoke. "I'm here." Roland's eyes softened. "You're welcome, my son." And without thinking, John stepped forward and hugged him, so tight, like his life depended on it. For the first time in his life, he felt what it meant to belong. Weeks passed after John's first visit to the mansion, and things slowly began to change. It wasn't perfect. John still struggled to adjust to this new world. Sometimes he felt out of place sitting across from businessmen and dignitaries during Roland's small family dinners. Sometimes the weight of the years they had lost still pressed on his chest. But there was laughter now, conversations, awkward jokes, little gestures that built a bridge between two lives separated by 16 years of secrets. Stella noticed the change too. John smiled more often. He spoke about his plans, his dreams, things he had never allowed himself to think about when he lived in the shadows. Roland called John to his study one evening. "I want to talk to you," he said. John nodded and sat down. "I don't care about titles, properties, or inheritance," Roland began. "But I want you to know you are my son in every way that matters." John swallowed, emotion rising in his throat. "I used to think I didn't need a father," he confessed quietly. "But I was wrong. I needed you." "I still do." Roland smiled, the smile of a man who had been broken and rebuilt. "From now on, no more secrets, no more distance." They shook hands, but this time it wasn't formal, it was a promise. Months later, John stood in front of a large audience at an award ceremony. He had been awarded a scholarship to study business administration at one of Nigeria's top universities, fully sponsored by the Olatunji Foundation, his father's NGO. When he was called to speak, he stepped forward confidently. "My name is John Nwankwo," he began, "and for a long time, I believed I was alone. But life has a funny way of rewriting our stories. Sometimes, what you're looking for is standing right in front of you. You just have to open the door." In the front row, Roland and Stella sat side by side, smiling with pride. As the crowd applauded, John's eyes met his father's, and he smiled. Finally, his story had come full circle. He wasn't lost anymore. Dear viewers, I want you to pause and reflect on this story. Chief Roland's extramarital affair with Stella was not just a moment of weakness, it became a lifetime of pain. That single act of unfaithfulness created a chain of sorrow. A child grew up without his father, a woman raised a son in hardship, and a family lived with secrets and regret. This is the bitter fruit of infidelity. It may seem sweet and harmless in the moment, but the consequences can last forever, destroying trust, breaking homes, and leaving innocent children to suffer. Protect your home and your dignity. What you enjoy in secret today may become the source of your deepest regret tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon with another amazing story. Bye for now.